The flickering neon lights cast an eerie glow over the abandoned city streets. Emily crouched behind an overturned car, her heart pounding as the sounds of inhuman moans echoed all around her. She gripped her pistol tightly, knuckles white with tension. Suddenly, a figure lurched into view. A twisted, decaying husk of a person, its eyes sunken and lifeless. Emily held her breath, praying it wouldn't notice her. But the zombie's head snapped in her direction, a guttural snarl escaping its lips. Without hesitation, Emily fired. The bullet tore through the zombie's skull, dropping it to the ground in a heap. But the sound of the gunshot had drawn the attention of more undead creatures. From every direction, they came shambling towards her position, their movements jerky and unnatural. Emily cursed under her breath, scrambling to her feet. She had to keep moving, had to find a way out of this nightmare. As she sprinted down the desolate street, she could feel the hot breath of the zombies on the back of her neck. They were relentless, driven by an insatiable hunger that consumed every shred of their humanity. Rounding a corner, Emily spotted an open doorway, a potential refuge from the horde. Without hesitation, she dove inside, slamming the door behind her and barricading it with whatever she could find. For a few precious moments, she was safe, her ragged breathing the only sound in the eerie silence. But the respite was short-lived. Pounding fists against the door signaled that the zombies had followed her, their inhuman screeches echoing through the building. Emily knew she couldn't stay here forever. She had to find a way out, a way to escape this nightmare and get to safety. Cautiously, she began to explore her surroundings, her senses on high alert. The building appeared to be some kind of abandoned office, the once pristine desks and computers now covered in a thick layer of dust. As she moved deeper into the structure, she noticed a stairwell leading up to the next floor. Without hesitation, Emily began to climb, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. The zombies' pounding grew louder, their cries more insistent. She had to keep moving, had to find a way to survive this ordeal. Reaching the second floor, Emily found herself in a maze of cubicles, the once bustling workspace now a silent tomb. She could hear the zombies below, their relentless pursuit driving her forward. Scanning the area, she spotted a door leading to what appeared to be a storage room. Ducking inside, Emily barricaded the door and took a moment to catch her breath. She knew she couldn't stay here for long, but the relative safety of the small room was a welcome respite from the horrors outside. As she steadied her nerves, a sudden movement in the corner of the room caught her eye. Whirling around, she leveled her pistol, only to be met with the terrified gaze of a young man, his face pale with fear. "Who are you?" Emily demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. The man opened his mouth to speak, but before he could utter a word, a sickening crack echoed through the room. Emily spun around, her heart pounding, as the door to the storage room began to buckle under the weight of the zombies' relentless assault. Their time was running out. The nightmare was only just beginning. Emily's heart raced as she stared at the splintering door, the groans of the undead growing louder with each passing second. She gripped her pistol tightly, her knuckles turning white as she prepared to make a desperate stand. Beside her, the young man she had discovered cowered in the corner, his eyes wide with terror. "We have to get out of here," he whispered frantically, his voice quivering. Emily nodded, her mind racing. "Follow me," she hissed, motioning for him to stay close. Cautiously, she crept towards the back of the storage room, searching for another exit. The sound of the zombies battering the door filled the air, the wood creaking ominously. Suddenly, Emily spotted a small window set high in the wall. It was their only chance. "Up there," she whispered, pointing. "We need to get through that window." The young man's eyes widened. "But it's too high. I can't reach it." Emily gritted her teeth. "Then I'll boost you up. Hurry." Without hesitation, she interlocked her fingers, forming a makeshift step. The young man placed his foot in her hands, and with a powerful thrust, she lifted him up towards the window. He clawed at the sill, pulling himself up and through the opening with great effort. Emily could hear the door groaning under the weight of the zombies. Any moment now, they would break through. She glanced around the room, searching for something to help her reach the window. Her eyes landed on a rickety old shelving unit, and without a moment's hesitation, she began to drag it across the floor. The sound of the shelves scraping against the concrete floor was agonizingly loud, and Emily froze as the zombies' relentless assault on the door paused. She held her breath, praying they hadn't heard the noise. But her luck had run out. With a deafening crash, the door splintered, and the zombies came pouring into the room, their soulless eyes fixed on their prey. Emily scrambled onto the shelves, her heart pounding as she reached for the windowsill. Her fingers brushed against the edge, and she let out a cry of triumph, pulling herself up and through the opening. But as she emerged onto the roof, she realized with horror that the young man was nowhere to be seen. "No," she cried, her voice cracking with anguish. Had he been taken by the horde? The thought made her stomach churn. Shaking off her grief, Emily turned her attention to the task at hand. She had to find a way to escape this nightmare, to survive the horrors that had consumed her city. With the zombies clawing at the window below, she knew she had to move quickly. Glancing around, she spotted a fire escape leading down the side of the building. It was her only chance. Taking a deep breath, she swung her legs over the edge and began to descend, her heart pounding with fear and determination. The journey down was treacherous, the metal stairs creaking and groaning under her weight. But she pushed on, driven by a desperate need to survive. As her feet hit the ground, Emily knew she had to find a safe haven, a place to regroup and plan her next move. The city was no longer safe, overrun by the undead. She had to get out, to find a way to fight back against the horrors that had consumed her home. With a new sense of purpose, Emily set off into the night, her footsteps echoing against the empty streets. The journey ahead would be treacherous, but she was determined to survive, no matter the cost. Emily's lungs burned as she sprinted through the deserted streets, the sounds of the undead echoing in the eerie silence. She had managed to escape the storage room, but the fate of the young man she had encountered still weighed heavily on her mind. As she rounded a corner, she spotted a familiar sight, the towering skyscraper that had once been the headquarters of the city's largest tech company. Emily's heart raced with a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there, she could find refuge, a chance to regroup and plan her next move. Steeling her nerves, she dashed towards the building, her footsteps echoing against the cracked pavement. The once grand entrance was now littered with debris, the glass doors shattered and hanging precariously. Emily paused for a moment, listening intently for any signs of movement. The building seemed eerily quiet, and she allowed herself a brief moment of relief. Cautiously, she stepped through the broken doorway, her pistol raised and ready. The lobby was a scene of utter devastation. Toppled furniture and shattered glass crunched under her feet as she made her way towards the elevators. To her dismay, the power was out, the lifts unresponsive. Cursing under her breath, Emily turned her attention to the stairwell, the only way up now. She knew the climb would be arduous, but she had no choice. Gripping the handrail, she began to ascend, her muscles aching with every step. As she climbed higher, a sense of unease began to settle over her. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the stairwell. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, her nerves on high alert. Suddenly, a sound echoed from above, a faint, guttural moan. Emily froze, her blood running cold. The zombies had found their way into the building. Slowly, she continued her ascent, her grip tightening on her pistol. The moans grew louder, more insistent, and Emily knew she had to move quickly. Rounding the next landing, she spotted a figure lurching towards her, its movements jerky and unnatural. Without hesitation, she opened fire, the crack of the gunshot echoing through the stairwell. The zombie crumpled to the ground, but its fall had drawn the attention of more undead creatures. From every direction they came, their sunken eyes fixed on their prey. Emily cursed, her finger tightening on the trigger as she fought to keep them at bay. Steadily, she worked her way up the stairs, each floor bringing her closer to the top. But the zombies were relentless, their numbers growing with every landing. Emily's arms ached from the strain of firing her weapon, and she knew she couldn't keep this up much longer. As she reached the final stairwell, a glimmer of hope flickered in her heart. The door to the rooftop was just ahead. If she could make it, she might have a chance to escape this nightmare. With a final burst of energy, Emily charged towards the door, her lungs burning. She could hear the zombies closing in behind her, their guttural moans taunting her. Gritting her teeth, she pushed the door open and stepped out onto the rooftop, silently praying that she would find a way to survive. Emily emerged onto the rooftop, her heart pounding in her chest. The city skyline stretched out before her, a once vibrant landscape now shrouded in an eerie silence. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the distant sounds of the undead echoed across the empty streets. Turning around, Emily slammed the door shut, barricading it as best she could with a nearby metal storage crate. She knew it wouldn't hold the zombies for long, but it would buy her precious time to catch her breath and survey her surroundings. As she scanned the rooftop, a glimmer of hope caught her eye. Nearby, a helicopter sat perched on a landing pad, its rotors motionless. Emily's pulse quickened. If she could get that helicopter running, she might just have a chance to escape the city and find safety. Cautiously, she approached the aircraft, her fingers trembling as she searched for a way to start the engines. The controls were unfamiliar, but she had no choice but to figure it out. Survival was the only thing that mattered now. Suddenly, a loud crash from behind her made her spin around, her pistol raised. The zombies had broken through the door, their twisted forms spilling out onto the rooftop. Emily's heart raced as she fired shot after shot, determined to hold them off long enough to get the helicopter started. But the undead were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Emily's ammo quickly dwindled, and she knew she couldn't keep this up much longer. Gritting her teeth, she turned back to the helicopter, her fingers frantically searching for the ignition switch. Just as the first of the zombies reached her, she felt the engines roar to life. A surge of adrenaline coursed through her, and she scrambled to climb aboard, slamming the door shut behind her. The helicopter lurched into the air, its rotors whirring as Emily fought to gain control. Below, the zombies clawed at the landing skids, their guttural cries echoing through the night. As the city fell away beneath her, Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had made it, against all odds. But the realization of all she had lost weighed heavily on her heart. The young man she had failed to save, the friends and loved ones she had left behind. The guilt was overwhelming. Pushing those thoughts aside, Emily focused on the task at hand. She had to find a safe place to land, a sanctuary away from the horror that had consumed her city. As the helicopter soared over the deserted streets, she scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of hope. Suddenly, a faint glimmer of light caught her eye. In the distance, she could see the faint glow of a settlement, its lights shining like a beacon in the darkness. Without hesitation, she guided the helicopter towards the promising site, praying that she would find the refuge she so desperately needed. The journey ahead would be fraught with peril, but Emily was determined to survive, no matter the cost. Her city had fallen to the undead, but she would not let it claim her. She would fight, she would endure, and she would find a way to take her revenge. As the helicopter approached the distant settlement, Emily's heart raced with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The lights below glimmered like a beacon in the darkness, a tantalizing promise of safety and sanctuary. But Emily had learned the hard way that nothing in this new, horrific world was ever as it seemed. She had watched her city fall to the relentless onslaught of the undead, and she knew that even the most secure-looking refuge could be a trap. Gripping the helicopter's controls, Emily carefully maneuvered the aircraft, searching for any signs of danger below. The settlement appeared to be a small, fortified compound, its walls seemingly strong enough to withstand the hordes of zombies that had overrun the city. Suddenly, Emily's eyes widened as she spotted movement near the compound's entrance. A horde of the undead, their twisted forms shambling towards the walls, their guttural moans echoing through the night. Without hesitation, Emily pulled the helicopter into a gentle descent, her finger poised on the trigger of the aircraft's mounted machine gun. As she drew closer, she could see the frantic activity below, the defenders of the compound struggling to hold back the advancing horde. Gritting her teeth, Emily opened fire, the steady stream of bullets tearing through the ranks of the zombies. The undead creatures crumpled to the ground, their lifeless bodies blocking the path of their comrades. The defenders below paused, their eyes turning skyward in awe and gratitude. Emily could see the relief on their faces as the helicopter's firepower turned the tide of the battle. As the last of the zombies fell, the compound's gates swung open, and a group of armed survivors rushed out to secure the perimeter. Emily expertly maneuvered the helicopter to the landing pad, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and caution. As the aircraft touched down, a tall, rugged-looking man approached, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Who are you?" he demanded, his hand resting on the holster of his sidearm. Emily steeled her nerves, her voice steady as she replied, "My name is Emily. I'm a survivor, just like you. I was hoping to find refuge here." The man's expression softened, and he gestured for her to follow him. "Come with me," he said, his tone still wary. "We'll have to see what the others say." As Emily followed the man through the compound's gates, she couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The walls and fortifications were impressive, but she knew that in this new, nightmarish world, no place was truly safe. The zombies were not the only threat. The survivors themselves could be just as dangerous, driven by desperation and fear. But Emily was determined to find a way to survive, to endure this hellish nightmare and, in time, to take her revenge on the undead horde that had destroyed her city. With the compound's defenders at her back, she might just have a chance. As she stepped through the gates, Emily knew that the greatest battle of her life was only just beginning. The compound's interior was a bustling hive of activity, with survivors scurrying about, securing their defenses and tending to the wounded. Emily followed the rugged-looking man, her senses on high alert, as he led her towards a large fortified building in the center of the complex. As they approached, the man turned to her, his expression now slightly less guarded. "The leader of our group will want to speak with you," he said, his voice gruff. "She'll decide if you're allowed to stay." Emily nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that her fate now rested in the hands of this mysterious leader, and she steeled herself for the confrontation. The man knocked on the door, and after a moment, it swung open to reveal a woman in her 40s, her face weathered and hardened by the horrors she had endured. She eyed Emily warily, her gaze piercing. "Who's this?" she asked, her tone clipped. "She says her name is Emily," the man replied. "She helped us fight off the horde, saved a lot of lives." The woman's expression softened slightly, and she gestured for Emily to enter. "Come in, then," she said, her voice tinged with a hint of curiosity. Emily stepped inside, her eyes quickly scanning the room. It was a makeshift command center, with maps and supplies scattered across a large table. The woman took a seat, motioning for Emily to do the same. "So, Emily," she began, her fingers drumming against the tabletop, "what brings you to our little sanctuary?" Emily took a deep breath, steeling her nerves. "I was hoping to find refuge here," she said, her voice steady. "My city has fallen to the undead. I barely managed to escape." The woman's brow furrowed, and she leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "And what makes you think you can trust us?" she asked, her tone laced with suspicion. Emily hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I don't have much choice," she admitted. "But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust and keep this place safe." The woman studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well," she said. "We could use someone with your skills and determination. Welcome to our community." Emily felt a surge of relief, but it was tempered by a sense of unease. She knew that the true test would be proving her worth to this group of hardened survivors, and that the road ahead would be fraught with peril. As the woman stood and motioned for her to follow, Emily couldn't help but wonder what challenges lay in store. The compound might provide temporary shelter, but the nightmare beyond its walls was only just beginning. With a deep breath, she steeled her resolve and followed the woman, determined to do whatever it took to survive and, ultimately, to take her revenge on the undead horde that had destroyed her city. As Emily followed the leader of the compound through the bustling community, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The survivors here were hardened, their eyes haunted by the horrors they had witnessed. She knew that gaining their trust would be no easy feat. The woman led her to a small, well-fortified building, its walls reinforced with steel and concrete. "This is where we keep our most valuable supplies and equipment," she explained, her tone matter of fact. "If you're going to be a part of this community, you'll need to earn the right to access these resources." Emily nodded, her mind racing. "I understand," she replied, her voice steady. "What do you need me to do?" The woman's lips curled into a slight smile. "Prove your worth," she said simply. "There are supply runs that need to be made, and the undead have been particularly active in certain areas. If you can handle yourself out there, then you'll have a place here." Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She knew that these supply runs would be fraught with danger, but she also recognized the opportunity. If she could demonstrate her skills and her resilience, she might just be able to secure a permanent place in this compound, a chance to rebuild her life and perhaps to take her revenge on the undead horde. "When do I start?" she asked, her eyes narrowing with determination. The woman's expression hardened. "Immediately," she replied. "There's a supply run leaving within the hour. You'll be going with a team. Don't slow them down, and don't get them killed." With that, the woman turned and strode away, leaving Emily to ponder the gravity of her task. She knew that the stakes were high, and that the other survivors would be watching her every move, ready to turn on her at the slightest sign of weakness. But Emily was no stranger to adversity. She had survived the hell that had consumed her city, and she was determined to prove her mettle to these hardened survivors. With a deep breath, she set off to join the supply run, her mind racing with a mix of trepidation and resolve. As the team made its way through the abandoned streets, the eerie silence was shattered by the sudden appearance of a horde of zombies. The undead creatures emerged from the shadows, their decaying forms lurching towards the survivors with unnatural speed and ferocity. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she raised her weapon, her finger tightening on the trigger. She knew that this was her moment to shine, to demonstrate her worth to the group. With a steady hand and a keen eye, she picked off the zombies one by one, her shots finding their mark with deadly precision. The other survivors watched in awe, their own weapons blazing as they fought to hold back the horde. Emily felt a surge of pride, but she knew that the true test was yet to come. As the last of the zombies fell, the team pressed on, their journey fraught with peril. But Emily remained steadfast, her determination fueling her every step. She knew that her future, and perhaps the future of the entire compound, rested on her ability to survive this ordeal. As the sun began to set, the team returned to the compound, their supplies secured and their spirits lifted. The leader of the group approached Emily, her expression unreadable. "Well done," she said simply, her voice tinged with a hint of approval. "Welcome to the family." Emily felt a surge of relief, but she knew that the real battle was just beginning. The undead horde was relentless, and the challenges they would face in the days and weeks to come would test their resolve to the limit. But with the support of this newfound community, Emily was more determined than ever to survive, and to take her revenge on the zombies that had taken everything from her. In the days that followed, Emily's integration into the compound's community deepened. She proved her worth time and time again, her skill with a weapon and her unwavering determination earning her the respect and trust of her fellow survivors. As the horde of zombies outside the walls continued to grow, the compound's defenses were put to the test. Emily quickly became a key member of the scouting and supply teams, her intimate knowledge of the devastated city proving invaluable. But the true test came when a massive horde of undead, mutated and more savage than anything they had faced before, launched a relentless assault on the compound. The walls shook under the weight of the onslaught, and the survivors found themselves fighting for their very lives. In the midst of the chaos, Emily fought with a ferocity born of grief and determination. She had lost everything to the zombies, and she would be damned if she was going to let them take this fragile sanctuary as well. As the battle raged on, Emily noticed a strange shift in the behavior of the zombies. They seemed to be adapting, their movements becoming more coordinated and their attacks more strategic. It was as if they were learning, evolving to overcome the survivors' defenses. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Emily knew that they needed to find a way to turn the tide. Slipping away from the fighting, she made her way to the compound's makeshift laboratory, where a team of scientists had been studying the undead. There, she discovered a horrifying truth. The zombies were mutating at an unprecedented rate, their transformation fueled by some kind of viral catalyst. If they didn't find a way to stop the spread of this new strain, the entire compound would be overrun. Steeling her nerves, Emily rushed back to the front lines, her mind racing with a desperate plan. Grabbing a stockpile of explosives, she led a small team of the compound's most skilled fighters on a daring mission to the heart of the zombie horde. As they fought their way through the throngs of undead, Emily could feel the ground trembling beneath her feet. The mutated zombies were closing in, their inhuman howls echoing through the night. But Emily was undaunted. With precision and skill, she and her team planted the explosives, setting a trap for the advancing horde. As the mutated creatures closed in, Emily detonated the charges, the earth-shattering blast tearing through the ranks of the zombies. The survivors watched in awe as the once fearsome horde was reduced to a pile of smoldering, twisted bodies. Emily's gamble had paid off, and the compound's defenses had held. In the aftermath of the battle, the leader of the community approached Emily, her eyes shining with a mixture of admiration and gratitude. "You've proven yourself time and time again," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Without you, we wouldn't have survived this onslaught." Emily nodded, her expression solemn. "I made a promise to myself," she said, her voice low. "I won't let the zombies take anything else from me." The leader's lips curved into a small smile. "Then welcome, Emily, to your new home. Together, we'll rebuild, and we'll take back what was stolen from us." As Emily surveyed the battered but resilient compound, she felt a glimmer of hope ignite within her. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but she was determined to see it through. The zombies had taken her city, her loved ones, and her sense of security. But now, she would take her revenge. One by one, she would hunt down the mutated monsters, ensuring that no other community would suffer the same fate as her own. And with the support of her newfound family, she knew that the ultimate victory would be hers. The zombies had taken everything from her, but she would not rest until she had reclaimed what was rightfully hers. The city, the compound, her life. All of it would be restored, no matter the cost. This was her war, and she would not stop fighting until the last zombie had fallen.